For those of you who may not be aware, Subway Surfers is a mobile game about running along a train track, avoiding obstacles and trying not to get caught by the guard. This endless runner was created by Cybo Games, a mobile game development company located in Denmark. The company, mainly known for being the creators of the aforementioned Subway Surfers, have recently created an animated series based off of their app. It ran starting from June 1st, 2018 on their YouTube channel, but a first look video was published on December 25th, 2017. The animated series adds a world, personalities, and a mystery factor to the Subway Surfers universe. If you haven't seen the show yet, I strongly suggest you watch the entire thing before continuing, as I will be sharing some major spoilers. Something you may have noticed is that the episodes don't seem in order. It makes the series seem much more segmented than it actually is, and makes the mystery that much harder to follow. In fact, the entire series takes place over 2 days. For instance, episode 11, Flux, the seemingly epic final conclusion to the first 10 episodes, is actually right in the smack center of the entire series. That's right, there are 5 episodes before the events of episode 11 and 5 episodes after. Episode 11 acting as a link almost as the one we saw the Bunnyman create at the end of that very same episode. Alright, so what is the order of the episodes? Well, that's actually quite difficult to say. I mean, certain episodes are quite easy to put together, but others are not. Nonetheless, let's start with episode 7, Surveillance. Now, my claim isn't that this is the very first episode, but it's the furthest back I could go to a series of events that actually make sense. In episode 7, the small group of friends find themselves, without Yutani, outside of Mully's at the skate park. They are wistful of the park as they recall old memories being scared when they were starting out. But they are abruptly stopped by a text from Yutani telling them to meet at the train yard. They all meet up to find that Yutani has claimed control over the turbine she found in episode 1, Buried. She turned it into a hoverboard and Jake quickly jumps to the opportunity to use it. And after a few funny references to the actual app, Jake is suddenly jerked off of the board exclaiming, "Worth it!" So it's not too hard to notice that episode 10, Intruders, is a direct continuation of this. Jake can even be heard crashing and saying on the guard's cameras. In this episode, Jake creates a name for the group, Subway Surfers, something they commit to keep a secret. So Jake decides to spray paint it on the side of a train, just to make sure he doesn't forget. But as he's doing that, everybody else leaves to avoid confrontation with the guard and his dog. Not too surprisingly, episode 11, Flux, comes next, where we see our first and only chase scene in the entire series. Quite ironic, considering that the app is nothing but that. Plus, this is where we get to see a decent amount of screen time for the Bunnyman. By the way, I know that the Bunnyman actually has a name, but I'm gonna save that for a future video, so stay tuned for that. At the end of this episode, Guard catches Jake claiming he'll bring up his actions to his mother. This is where things get interesting, as that is just the situation we see in episode 2, Busted. And we can see that this episode is relevant as the guard brings Jake to his mother, and Jake almost spills the beans about using a hoverboard. Another important detail is the fact that the sun is now rising, which correlates greatly with the fact that it was nighttime when Guard caught Jake. But Jake doesn't need sleep to survive, he needs food. Seriously though, this guy has an incredible metabolism.
I am starving! Now I'm thinking of Mully's steak sandwich. Oh boy, now look what you did. Yeah, like lasagna with fresh parm.
So instead of meeting at the yard that morning, they meet up at Mully's. Something that we can clearly see in episode 9. And if that wasn't enough to tell you that episode 9 happened after episode 2, we can also prove that it happened after episode 11. Look closely. Right there. Did you miss it? Here, let me freeze frame it for you. Newsflash, that's not any ghost train, but the train we saw vanish out of thin air in episode 11. Aside from that, not much happens in this episode. Although, keep in mind the color of Fresh's kicks. So what episode comes after episode 9? Episode 3, Heirloom. How do I know this? While it's true that nothing really distinct happens in this episode proving it happens after the events of episode 9, if you pay attention you'll notice that it takes place in the morning. Tricky just woke up and started eating breakfast in a rush, so the times would match up with episode 9. Fresh's parents were even nagging Fresh about eating breakfast. And it makes sense that Tricky would be late for something. She wants to meet up with the rest of the gang. And where are they? At Mully's, where Jake is shoving fries. So far, it's all making sense. The episode ends with the friends meeting up at the hospital because... you would think that there would be an episode taking place in the hospital, or at least some mention of it, but nay. So, now what? Episode 6, Invention. Okay, what possible proof do we have that shows that Yutani creating some sciencey invention on her livestream comes after the developments we got from the previous episode? Well, we know that Tricky has a ballet recital, so wouldn't it make sense that the recital episode comes next? No. How do we know this? Listen closely to the message Yutani gets from Mr. Cutie.
Just wanna do T's recital with me and F ballerina. Applause, cheeseburger. Oops.
T's recital obviously referring to Tricky's ballet recital, and me and F being Jake and Fresh. They haven't left yet. We can even see them at the end of the episode at the yard. And wouldn't you know it, that's our next episode. Episode 5, The Recital. Now, this episode is interesting. We see Jake and Fresh actually arrive, just as mentioned in the previous episode, but nothing too special actually happens. There's a catchy street dance and song combo, but at the very end of the episode, the camera zooms out of Fresh's phone. To me, this sounds like it could be a really clever way to showcase that the episodes aren't always as they seem as far as order goes. And the 4 friends can be seen at the yard all rewatching the events of the episode since Jake streamed it all. And yes, all 4. Yutani got to see what she missed out on. Thus, this is our timeline so far. Episodes 7, 10, 11, 2 and 9 happening at about the same time, 3, 6, and 5. I know they said the episodes weren't in order, but I mean, this is next level. At least Star Wars was 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. This is all over the place. Anyway, this leaves us with episodes 1, 4, and 8 left to place. And it's real hard to figure out where they go. But here's my theory. Assuming episode 1 is the first episode in the series, episode 8 would be next. The only reason I say this is because of the process of elimination. In episode 4, it is mentioned that Fresh is a creature of habit, which is quite odd considering that this is the only episode where Fresh wears a different pair of kicks. And yes, I've checked every episode. Twice! This means that it has to be either the furthest episode in the timeline, or the furthest back. Alright, now that we got most of the episodes in order, I thought maybe that there would be some sort of clever anagram hidden within the titles where if you put them in order it actually form a sentence, but I really have a hard time to put anything together. Although, Busted Boombox is an interesting coincidence considering episodes 2 and 9 happen after each other, and Fresh specifically mentions how he'd be horrified if that ever happened to Boomy. But that's just my theory. What do you think? Make sure to leave your ideas in the comments below so we can discuss the timeline further. I'll be releasing videos bi-weekly on this channel, so come back in 2 weeks for some more Subway Surfers Top Secrets.